Dave, welcome back. It's Wednesday. Happy hump day.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. Always glad to be on top of the hump of the week.
Yeah. So now we're here asking you retirement questions. But before we get into it, what's it like in Tennessee these days?
It has been rainy, very, very rainy. Hopefully, we're getting sun for the next 4 or 5 days. Now, it's really weird because as I look out a day or two on the calendar, it always shows sun, and then we get to the day and there's rain again. But we've had tons of rain. Luckily, we've not been in the part of Tennessee where everything's flooding and you've got people losing their lives. But definitely, have had more rain than I've seen since I lived on the island of Puerto Rico.
Yeah, my wife just got back from Nashville. She got home late last night, about midnight, and said it was some of the scariest storms she's ever been through. And I forget how powerful those lightning and thunderstorms are out there in the South.
Yes, we have gotten a ton of lightning and thunder. Sounds like it's just right outside our house all the time. And that's something new for my kids. I was raised around it some in Utah. You'd get that every once in a while, definitely not at the level you do here. But for my kids, Puerto Rico, very seldom did you have that. We did have maybe once every couple of years, you'd have a really good thunderstorm. But they definitely commented on it all the time with what we've got going on now.
Exactly. Well, we'd like to welcome you, obviously, first of all, Dave, and then welcome all those who are watching us live. We are here with Dave Hall, the Prosperity Guy. And what we do is we just throw as many questions as we can at him, all regarding retirement. And today we're focused on Medicare. So we have a list of questions that we're going to throw at Dave. And then we encourage you, if you're watching live, to go ahead and submit your question. And we throw that to Dave also and see if we can squeeze that in the middle of everything. And with that, Dave, we'll go ahead and get started. And for those watching live, let us know where you're watching from. If you have retirement questions, even if it's not in Medicare, if it's Social Security, long-term care, reverse mortgage, whatever your heart desires that you want to ask Dave, let's go ahead and throw it out, because I like to see if we could stump him once in a while. He really has most answers to everything, but once in a while, I think we can get you stumped.
Yes, you definitely can. Once in a while, you do get that odd question that I definitely don't know the answer to, but we do our best. We try to make sure we get as many of them answers as we can here.
Yeah, exactly. All right, Dave. So we are talking Medicare today. So I'm going to go through and just give you a whole list of questions. We're going to go through there, and we're going to start with our first one from Dawn. And Dawn is asking, if you have employer health insurance at age 65, which parts should you sign up for in order to avoid penalties later?
If you've got employer health insurance, once you reach age 65, there's nothing you have to sign up for at all with Medicare to be subject to any future penalties. Now, many people will take Part A because of the fact that they are able to get that for free. There's no charge for that for most people. So generally, you're able to get those benefits without having to pay out of pocket. So they'll take those. Only other situation that you may want to look at, though, is if you are a small employer and you don't end up signing up for Medicare, Medicare is going to be the primary insured. So you may have an issue where your insurance will not cover the costs of your health expenses if Medicare is supposed to be primary until you pay them yourself, because there should have been a third party in the middle paying those. They're not there, and you may get stuck with those costs. So I would just tell you from that side, from an insurance side, you want to look at it, but from a penalty side, definitely nothing you need to worry about in your situation.
And so, Dave, if we take Dawn's situation, and so she has insurance through her employer right now. So what you're saying is that there's no parts that she's required to sign up for because she has that current health insurance, right?
Correct. Yeah. Usually what you have is on Part B. If you don't get signed up timely, you end up with a 10% per year penalty that is increasing, and they'll go throughout the rest of your retirement. So if you waited 4 years to sign up for Medicare Part B, you didn't have prior health insurance from an employer, you could be subject to a 40% penalty on your monthly premiums that would carry with you throughout the rest of your lifetime.
And Dave, is there anything to look for as you're getting closer to retirement and you still have insurance, but is there things you need to kind of get set up in place for Medicare?
Absolutely. This is one of the biggest issues I'm finding when I'm meeting with people now. It used to be Social Security, and part of it was just because they didn't know enough about Medicare. Now, as I've continued to educate myself on the Medicare program, what I'm finding is that many people have issues with Medicare and they don't even realize it. We just assume 65, we get insurance, so we go on the government's program, everything's going to be perfect, we're not going to have any issues. But you've got all these unknowns out there. Again, if you've got small group coverage and Medicare is supposed to be primary, now you may be completely, in theory, uninsured because it's your responsibility to pick up those costs. Maybe you've got a situation where you've got to choose between a Medigap or a Medicare Advantage plan. All these things have to be determined. And if you don't look at it or do it correctly, it could cost you dearly down the road, especially if you got large pre-existing conditions that could be very costly down the road. You want to make sure you get it right, or it could cost you tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars in out-of-pocket dollars that you hadn't expected.
And Dave, this leads me to the next question from Tamara. She's saying, so what if you don't want to take it at age 65?
Then if you don't have any other insurance from an employer side, meaning now you can get onto Obamacare, the Affordable Care Insurance. They're not going to provide you any subsidies once you reach age 65, but you can stay on there. But you will be subject to a 10% penalty on your Part B. And then you also may have penalties on your Part D, which is a prescription drug. If you choose to sign up for Part D, it's a 1% per month penalty on that for whatever your premiums would be for your Part D costs.
Why would Tamara not want to sign up? Let's just put that out there first of all.
So a couple of reasons. Number one, usually it's because you've got some type of other insurance, that you've got a plan through maybe a spouse. Maybe you are on a Obamacare plan that you really like, and so you'd like to stay on that. You know your doctors, you know the system. One of the problems with medical issues is it's hard to navigate through. I mean, like currently I have issues because I've got Humana and I've got Medicare. And when you've got two different insurance policies, it can be very difficult to navigate who's paying what, making sure the claims get processed correctly. And I'm dealing with that currently myself. So someone may not want to get someone else in the middle of this if they don't have to. Others just, for whatever reason, may not want to pay the cost. Maybe they're in a situation where they're in pretty good health right now. They don't expect to have any big expenditures coming out from a medical side, and they just don't want to have to pay the Part B premiums on a monthly basis for right now.
All right. That's great advice. I'm going to try to squeeze one more in before we take one of our comments from our live viewers. Can you obtain benefits from a deceased spouse if you were divorced, but the ex-spouse never remarried?
Yeah, it's going to fall into the same guidelines that you have for Social Security. So there are rules that allow you to get death benefits from Social Security if you are in a situation where you've been divorced and the ex-spouse never remarried and now passed away. You basically had to have been married for a 10-year period of time and then divorced. From a Social Security standpoint, if you are going to claim at any time, you have to have been divorced for at least 2 years. But as long as you're married for 10 years, they've met the requirements, you would still be able to get those Medicare benefits.
All right, Dave, I'm going to jump over. We got a couple from Gary in here. We're talking about the backdoor Roth IRA. And so he's asking, is the 2020 backdoor Roth IRA still available if the strategy is executed on or before the 17th of May, 2021?
No, it is not, because what you've got is you're going to have to do a conversion into the Roth, and the conversions had to have been done before December. So the contribution can go into the regular tax deferred IRA, the traditional IRA account, but any conversion is going to be counted for 2021 because the deadline was December 31st.
And then there's a follow-up with this one from Gary also. When converting from a tax-deferred 401k or IRA to a tax-free 401k or IRA, must I first sell currently held stock mutual funds to cash before completing the conversion process?
Generally not, Gary, but it depends on the broker that you're going to. Usually you can do in-kind transfers where you're taking the holdings that you already have and transferring them over, assuming that they're accounts that the other brokerage firm would handle. Now, if you're talking individual stocks such as Apple or Tesla or something like that, obviously they're going to be able to facilitate that. But you may have ETFs. Like I do a lot of investing with Vanguard. Vanguard's got specific ETFs that are not going to be available through Schwab or through Fidelity. So you'll have to look at those on your mutual funds and the other funds you've got. But if they're generally traded through all markets, yes, you would be able to just do the transfer of those assets without having to liquidate those into cash and then rebuying them again.
And Gary, thank you so much for your live question. And this is what we're looking for. So if you're out there watching live and you want to submit your retirement question, we'd love to have that thrown in the mix of our Medicare conversation today and see if we can get those answered. All right, Dave, let me jump back over and see if we can get Susan's question. Is there a maximum out of pocket? We're talking Medicare again.
Yeah, so when you look at it, no. I mean, this is one of the biggest problems you have with Medicare. Now, there's a lot of gaps inside of it. One is the Part A is only going to cover so many days in the hospital. So you could get to a position where you exceeded your annual days or your benefit period days, as well as your lifetime days that you have available. And now you would be stuck for that additional coverage. Also, Part B, 20% of the costs are not covered through Part B Medicare for the general medical stuff that you would have outside the hospital. And there's no maximum. So this is why most people are going to buy a Medigap policy to help fill those gaps so that you do have some coverage. So it's not potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars out of your own pocket, or why someone may choose to go to a Medicare Advantage plan so that they can take advantage of the benefits it offers as well to close these gaps.
And Dave, you're leading me perfectly into my next question, because this is from Mickey, where she's saying, okay, Dave, you talked about both of these just recently. So what is the difference between a Medigap plan and a Medicare Advantage plan?
Medigap plans are added onto your traditional Medicare. So you're going to stay inside of Part A, you're going to stay inside of Part B, and then you're going to buy a policy that's going to fill in those uncovered gaps, whether it's a deductible, whether it's a copay, whether it's the percentage that's not getting paid because you've exceeded the days that you had coverage for. Medigap plan is going to cover that. It's going to allow you to take advantage of all the benefits Medicare offers nationally. Medicare Advantage plan is where they consolidate parts A and B into a private insurance company, and then you get that coverage through that insurance company for part A, B, as well as the gap coverage. Now, the biggest difference is most Medicare Advantage plans, I guess there's one now that's supposedly national, but all of the others are geographically located, meaning you're in Utah. If you've got a Medicare Advantage plan, it may not cover anywhere near as much in Tennessee if you were to travel as it currently does in Utah. Well, if you've got a Medicare plan with Medigap, usually you can travel anywhere in the United States, get the exact same coverage, have everything paid for as if you were in the same place, because it's all inside the United States.
And Dave, with this, how does somebody really determine what's best for them? I mean, they look at this and they think, hey, there's lots of options, but what is best for me? How do they decide this?
Two biggest things that I would recommend that you do is, one, look at your coverage from a traveling standpoint. Again, if you're not going anywhere, if you're the type of person that's saying, I'm in retirement, I'm really going to stay around my house, I don't expect to travel, Medicare Advantage plan may be really right for you. But the other thing you've got to look at is just the gaps that it's going to cover. And one of the ways you can do this is you can go to medicare.gov, sign up for an account, type in your zip code, and it's going to show you what plans are available for you. So it is going to require some homework. It's going to require you to look through the various plans. They're not all created equal. Every insurance company can charge you differently for a Medigap plan as well as a Medicare Advantage plan. They can all cover different areas of the gaps that are existing. But the best thing you can do is do the homework to find that information out.
All right, great. Well, Dave, we have a follow-up that when Gary asked his question, we have a follow-up from Mike that's coming in. So he's saying, follow-up to Gary's question, at what dollar value is the conversion transferred cost basis, or FMV, at time of transfer to determine what tax is paid?
Yeah, so what you've got to look at is you're going to look at the fair market value of what those are at that time. So yes, once that conversion's done, and again, there's going to be daily fair market value at the time of transfer of what those assets are. That's what's going to be deemed your price that you're going to end up paying tax on those assets. So it will be determined based upon the exact moment in time when the assets were transferred over to the Roth, but it will be the fair market value that's given.
And Mike, thank you for the question. Hopefully that answered the question that both you and Gary had. If you have additional questions while we're still here for about 15 minutes, go ahead and get that submitted. And then Gary's asking, can you recommend any Medigap insurance carriers?
Unfortunately, Gary, I don't sell any of this stuff, so I don't know the best carriers. I don't know the best companies that are going to offer these products. So unfortunately, I can't be of much help to you there. There is a company out there that I know is very heavily involved in Medicare. That's all they do. It's called Boomer Benefits. I would recommend maybe you go to their site, boomerbenefits.com, where they do 100% Medicare policies, Medigap policies, Medicare Advantage plans. They may be a better resource than what I can provide you from an individual carrier standpoint.
And so, Dave, why do we take time to talk about Medicare as we're talking about these questions? What's so important about it, and what's important about it to you?
Yeah, two reasons, CR. Number one is because the cost of medicine during retirement is going to be much larger than we expect it is. And for current averages, what we're looking at is about $150,000 for a male and $135,000 for a female is what they will spend on medical costs during the retirement years. This is a substantial amount of money for the average family. The next one is because of what's being projected to happen on these costs. When we look at the future and we look at the increased burden that the government has because of these programs, many economists believe that your Social Security check, if you're an average person, there will be a day that your Social Security check will only cover Medicare. That's it. You're not going to get any extra money to live off of. Your insurance costs are going to be so high that it will take your average, which is about $1,400 a month. All of that will go just to cover the medical costs you have. So we want to try to get people in the best position as they can now. Again, it'll be years before it gets to a point where they would take away your full Social Security check. But in the next 2 or 3 decades, they expect that's what's probably going to have to happen to be able to allow these programs to sustain themselves.
And I look at this and I think about what Gary's asking too, is how does somebody just find a way to help them progress through this? Because there's so many companies out there, and it's like anything else we talk about. How do we know what's best for us? And you said we can go to Medicare.gov, but what about these other options? What's our opportunities for us to really get more education on this?
We do offer classes on it. I would encourage you to take our classes. I would encourage you also take classes from other people that are in this space. Because again, it's not a just one size fits all. It's not a one and done. And that's unfortunately how it's sold. It's kind of like Social Security. Everybody thinks, oh, I can just start taking Social Security at any time and the outcome's going to be the exact same. Well, that's not the case. If you choose to claim your Social Security at age 62 and you should have waited till 70 and you live into your 90s, it could be hundreds of thousands of dollars in difference of what you're able to get if you chose to wait. And the same thing here. If you blow it on the initial sign up, you're going to miss out maybe on the guarantee period, that if you had pre-existing conditions, there's a Medigap guarantee period that you're able to stay in. If you choose to go to Medicare Advantage plans, you may find that you can't go back to Medicare and Medigap policies because they're not going to cover those pre-existing conditions. So you've got to be able to do the homework to better understand it, but you're going to have to get someone else involved. Most people aren't going to be able to do it themselves, although Medicare.gov contains all the information you need. Very hard to work through it and figure out how it's going to best going to help you without getting professionals who are teaching the courses to allow you to process what's being said, what you've read, and then making those decisions for yourself.
Great advice. Well, Dave, let's jump back into a few more questions I have here. This one's quite long. Some of these I never get to put a name in because there's so much. There's only so many characters I can put in. But this one says, if someone does not sign up for Part A within 3 months of turning 65 and not working, do they have to wait until the next general enrollment period? And will they pay a 10% penalty for every year they miss?
Yeah, let me address the second part of this first. So remember, 10% penalty is only dealing with Part B, which if you don't have Part A, you don't have Part B. So in theory, yes, you're going to end up having that 10% penalty. But it's not on Part A, it's on Part B. Now, in regards to the first part, yes, you have to wait. And this is one of the problems. If you miss your initial enrollment period and you've got 3 months prior to turning age 65 and it goes 3 months after, but again, realize if you wait until after, you're still going to have a gap in coverage because it's not going to start until you get everything signed up for. But if you miss that, you do have to wait till next general enrollment period. And it means you're going to have to wait until July of the given year before you can start getting benefit. So it can become a major issue to people who have this gap and then end up with some type of medical problem, and they now don't have coverage they should have if they would have got their paperwork in on time.
And this is only for Part A, right?
Yeah, it's for Part A, but Part B as well. I mean, again, you can't get Part B without Part A. So once you're in this situation, if you don't have them both together, you're not getting either of those benefits until you hit that July 1st date and you've gone through the general enrollment period that happens at the end of the year.
And so just like you talked about before, this is why it's very important that you know exactly when you should apply for this so that way you're not missing these opportunities?
Absolutely. Dates going into retirement are critical for you. You don't want to miss Social Security date because, again, it could cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars. And you definitely don't want to miss Medicare date because it could cost you tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands as well, depending on your medical conditions and when they happen and what insurance you have to be able to cover those.
Yeah. All right, Dave, let's jump over to Glenn. I wanted to get his question in here. What happens if illness or accident requiring hospitalization happens overseas while on vacation?
You're not going to get any coverage from Medicare. You need to understand that. And this is one of the big things when I teach Medicare classes that really become shocking to people. For some reason, they think if you travel foreignly that you're going to get covered. Well, same thing with your health insurance. Most of you may or may not realize this, but most of your health insurance policies are not going to cover you overseas either because they have no doctors, they have no plans, they have no system over there. So what you've got to do is be able to provide or buy some other type of insurance. Now, if you're going on a cruise ship, oftentimes they'll offer it. There's other companies will offer some type of insurance to help ensure that you're protected, but it's not going to come through Medicare, and very seldom will it even come through a Medigap or a Medicare Advantage plan just because there's no network over there these companies can really work with.
And Dave, when you answered Mickey's question earlier, you were talking about Medigap plans and Medicare Advantage plans. You're really talking about those people who are not traveling at all, because we're talking overseas, but you're also talking traveling between states, right? So we're making sure that we're pretty much saying, hey, we're going to be staying put in one location, or are we going to be traveling?
Yeah, exactly. No, traveling in retirement is something you've definitely got to consider, and the things you'd be doing while you travel and how you would be covered. Again, is it going to be covered through the policy you have through a Medicare plan? Yes, if it's inside the US. Are you going to be covered through a Medigap plan or a Medicare Advantage plan? Probably not. And if they do, it's going to be out of network. So it may be where in network you've got a small deductible or a small copay. Out of network, you may have a 20% copay and $1,000 or $2,000 deductible. So these are all things you've got to take into consideration.
And Dave, I want to go to one more question that's regarding being out of the country, because I think this is a very valid topic that a lot of people are asking about, especially when in retirement, you want to travel. And this one says, if someone with Part C would like to drop their Medicare coverage, Part B, C, but maintain Part A benefits, how can they do this? They plan to be out of the country, so it's not worth paying for Part B.
Yeah. So what they're going to have to do if they're in this situation is that you can cancel that coverage. You just got to understand that once you want to come back in, if you decide to, you're going to be subject to all the restrictions of getting back into the program. So you can stop paying or cancel that at any time because it's all based upon the payment that you're paying into Part B or C. So you can cancel that at any time. You just got to realize there'll be consequences on the back end if you come back into the country.
Dave, let's say I'm 65. I'm getting ready for my retirement years, and I'm planning on traveling a ton, especially within the States and overseas. What's my best option? How do I look at this and say, okay, CR, this is what you really need in order to make sure it works? And again, everyone's different, but I'm just trying to figure out what we can do to kind of make sure we're getting closer to being prepared.
For most of you, it's going to be Medicare. If you're traveling Medicare with the Medigap policy and then some type of foreign coverage, whether it's through the Medigap policy, if there's any ability for the company you're working with to help you cover those events, or whether you've got to go out and buy a separate policy to cover you while you're traveling overseas, but Medicare is going to provide that. Now, again, my understanding is United Healthcare has just come up with a national network for Medicare Advantage plans. So that may be worth looking into. I don't know any details about it. But if you're traveling a lot, maybe that's an option for you as well. But I would make sure that they cover in all of the areas. Now, having a national network may mean that they're in all the big cities. It doesn't necessarily mean they're out in all the suburbs and all the rural areas. So you'd want to make sure you verify that, because from Medicare standpoint, as long as it's Medicare-based facility, which they have them all throughout the U.S., urban, rural, everywhere, you're going to get covered under your Medicare coverage if you have a Medicare plan.
And Dave, I'm going to jump over. We have a little bit more time here, so I'm going to ask Gary's question. When using a solo 401k to invest in alternative investments like real estate, what is the typical down payment amount required to satisfy the bank lender in a leveraged transaction?
Gary, one of the things you need to remember when you're dealing with these transactions is you can't have a secured transaction, meaning most banks are not going to lend on these because you cannot use the real estate as a guarantee for the loan. You've got to have completely unsecured lending if you're doing them inside of these retirement accounts. So, what's the average amount? Generally, there's no amount you can pay because banks are going to want some type of leverage to be able to get into the transaction, and you're not going to be able to do that the way these are structured. Now, with a solo 401k, you can get financing in there and not be subject to the the debt. I can't remember the exact term for it. There's a term that if you've got financing on a piece of real estate in an IRA, you're going to end up paying part of the profits off of that in tax in the year that you have the income coming out of that investment. And it's going to be at the trust rates, which get to 37% at about $12,000 or $13,000 per year. So anytime we're doing these alternative investments, especially real estate, my recommendation is you stay away from leverage transactions. Again, you can get borrowed money maybe from an individual that could get the money into there, but you got to be very careful because especially on the IRA side, if you're on that end and you have to pay that extra tax, it doesn't mean you no longer have to pay it once you pull the money out. You're paying a double tax. You paid it 37%. You pull it out, you may pay another 37% on that same money, depending on what tax bracket you're in. So, yeah, be careful here. If you're going down that road, it's something you want to make sure you understand. But I've not seen a bank that's been willing to lend inside of there when you've got a solo 401k because of the fact they can't get any guarantee on their loan.
And Gary, thank you so much for the question. We're going to try to squeeze a few more other questions in here that we have on our system, Dave, and continue again, always to submit those questions. And if we don't get them this week, we always have next week and the week after and the week after that. So we're here to continually add and try to throw as many questions as we can at you, Dave. All right. So let me jump over here. I'm going to try to see, I'm going to scroll through and get a few other ones that we have here. Let's see if we can get this one from Nancy. Is it a good idea to use a broker to help navigate all of the options?
Absolutely. When you're talking about Medicare, the more people you can get involved in the process, the better. Now, obviously, you don't want to get 10 brokers in the middle of this thing and all of them giving you different answers and 9 of them trying to just hard sell you on getting you into their product. But yes, they're there. It's not going to cost you anymore to have a broker involved or someone to help you put this together. So you want to take advantage of the knowledge that they have. Now, you may meet with a broker or two, meet with a couple of them to make sure you better understand the products they have available, what they're saying to make sure it makes sense. But I would take advantage of that knowledge. Most of them have had years of experience in the industry. They're going to be able to answer those hard questions that you're going to have in regards to your lifestyle and what you should do with pre-existing conditions and what effect it may have so that you hopefully can get the best outcome possible for your retirement and your individual situation.
Dave, I think you said it best when you talked about, yeah, you can go to Medicare.gov and find out all the answers on your own. But when you team up with somebody like yourself as a retirement risk consultant or a broker, I found that as you do that, you start to get more of your questions answered. You feel like you're making better decisions. And how do we go about making sure we maintain those relationships so we're not always trying to say, I got this, I do it on my own, and then realize we're in trouble later on?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing we always need to look at is one of the things we're always most concerned about. Well, 2 things I guess I see is one, we're afraid we're going to look stupid because we're asking questions that we assume that maybe others already know. Well, don't worry about that. Again, especially when you're talking about Social Security, Medicare, these programs are so complex that you want the help. You want to be able to get that. And number 2, oftentimes we think we're going to have to pay for this advice some way, and maybe we're unwilling to pay it because we're either in a financial situation that we can't, or we just say, hey, it's not worth that amount of money for me to have to get this advice. Well, most of it's for free. I mean, there are things like we do teach classes where you're going to pay a small amount to be able to get access to some of the knowledge that we share. And you may have a consultant that's going to charge you an hourly basis if they're there helping you. But when you look from a broker side and obviously a sales side, most of them are getting some type of commission to where they're able to provide you the information for free, and it's nothing you have to worry about. I mean, that's one of the things CRI was saying. I was talking to a potential client earlier this morning. They're going to come with us and let us help them. But I will tell anyone, if you ever get involved with our company, you're going to get one of the best educations that you've ever gotten. Now, whether you do work with us or not, I will promise you by the time we're done looking at your retirement, you're going to have the best retirement education you ever got from a couple of guys that are there being able to share the knowledge we have. Because you take myself, I've been a CPA for over 25 years. You've got Brian Britt, who does a lot of the planning now. He's been a financial advisor for 33 years. I mean, you've got a lot of knowledge there that we're able to share to help people really get themselves where they need to be once they get into the retirement years.
And Dave, they can go to theprosperityguy.com and click on strategic session. And that's how they get that book. They book some time with you, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You can get out of my calendar. At this point, we're not charging for those meetings, nor are we currently charging for the plans. That is going to change. We're getting to a point that we're getting so busy, we can't keep up with it. And we realize that there's huge value to what we offer. It's not uncommon for us to spend 10 to 15 hours educating you, putting your plan together, getting everything set up for your retirement. There's huge value to that because, again, you're going to leave there saying, boy, I've never in my life got this type of an education in regards to my retirement and the risks that I'm facing as I go into the longest self-imposed period of unemployment that most of you are going to have.
And Dave, a lot of people are sitting here, if they're saying, okay, I don't know if I'm ready for this quite yet. Some other options are you have some new webinars, plus you have tons of webinars. If you go to theprosperityguy.com and click on the events tab, you can see all the upcoming webinars. But Dave, tell me about a few of the webinars that you have coming up that we're doing this month or in April, I guess.
Yeah, we've got so much that's going to happen over the next 6 months. Very excited for everything that's coming together. But now what we've got is we've got a long-term care webinar that has been released. We're going to go through the basics of long-term care. And again, realize I don't sell long-term care. So I'm not the guy out there trying to promote you to get into a product. I'm there to help you understand what happens and how it works and what your options are. The other one is we partnered up with one of the top educators in the insurance annuity industry, Tom Hegna, and he's doing a presentation with me on Paychecks to Playchecks. This was one of his first books he wrote, talking about the need of having guaranteed income in retirement. You need a paycheck. You know, one of the problems many people have when they get in retirement, they've spent 20, 30, 40 years saving. Well, now they're telling them, hey, that balance isn't going to keep going up every month. Now it's time to take it down. That becomes a problem for many retirees. They don't want to see that balance go down. So we set it up to where they can get paychecks so they can get that monthly income. So it's like as if they were working. They don't have to worry about those basic expenses. But then we also want paychecks so that we have money to spend for the traveling, the kids, all those other things that we want to, the grandkids in retirement. So he's doing that webinar. We will be doing another webinar with him called Retiring Happy. Don't worry, retire happy. That'll be coming up here soon. Also doing some on the benefits of life insurance, annuities, those type of things with Tom as well. So very excited about what we're doing. You can find all those, as CR mentioned, through our website, to where you can get more information, get signed up, and be aware. You don't have to be a CPA. I do. One of the problems with the platforms we teach in is I think many times people from these events get scared. They get into the platform, think, oh, this is only for CPAs or EAs. I can't be here. No, that's not the case. Yes, they're driven and primarily designed for CPAs, but the education's for everyone. You can take advantage of it there in the platform and get the benefits that we offer. And for most of it, it's going to be at no charge.
So again, if you go to theprosperityguy.com, you can find everything Dave has talked about throughout the events tab. And then also you have the strategic session tab that you can click on where you fill out a 2 or 3 part form, very short. And then it gets you over to Dave's calendar so you can meet with him and discuss any other needs you have. And Dave, thank you for sticking it out today. I've thrown a ton of Medicare questions. I have like 10 more to ask, but we'll wait for another time. And for taking those live questions from Mike and Gary. And thank you so much for being here and for helping us out today.
You're welcome. Always a pleasure to be able to share as much information as we can. I love this 30-minute period where we can just dump information down to help you get to a more safe and secure retirement.
And I'd like to thank all of you who have been here live and those on replay. Thank you for being part of this and for making it possible that we can continue to do this. Don't forget, we also have Dave's podcast that he releases every Friday. Every Wednesday or Thursday, you can catch us where we do a whole rapid Q&A over on LinkedIn. And again, all those other webinars. And there's other events that you have in the works, Dave, from live events or other events down the road as things open up. But we're just grateful for these opportunities to educate. And like you have said many times, the more education you get, the more powerful you're going to be, especially in retirement.
Absolutely. No, education is the key. And there, unfortunately, it doesn't seem to be enough of it out there. As much education as there is, when it gets to true retirement issues, what I'm finding is there's not a lot of people who can put it all together, in an environment where you can understand it and you can start addressing all those risks that your retirement's going to face.
Yeah. And Dave, again, thank you. And for everyone else, thank you. And we'll see you guys again next week. Have a great week.
See you guys.